Most children growing up grow up with their regular biological parents, but on some special occasions they do not, and I was one of those special occasions. Instead of growing up with my regular parents, I grew up with my grandparents. But as a child, I didn't think much of it because I saw my grandmother and my mother as one whole person. Now, my grandparents decided to move from California over to Minnesota when I was about 3 years old. And once leaving behind California meant leaving behind my mother. And when I got to Minnesota, I was only about 3 years old, and so I hadn't started school yet. And I got regular phone calls from my mother asking how I was, how was family, and just things in general. But I never really had that intimate connection with her, like a mother-daughter relationship. And once I started school, I started seeing all my friends, and they had their mothers, and they cared for them and accepted them and just loved them to the full extent. And I always wondered how it would be like to have my real mother with me. And during one of those phone calls, she told me that she had decided to move from California over to Minnesota. And at that moment, I didn't know if I should feel anxious, happy, or nervous. But when I did find out, I took a big calendar and I just marked down the days up until the big day. Now, I knew that we had to go pick her up to the airport, and I had been to the airport before, but this felt all new to me. And the car ride to the airport felt like forever. And opening the doors, all I could hear was the luggage being carried away, and the people just whizzing by and mumbling and walking really fast to get to their planes on time. So me and my grandparents found a spot to sit to wait for the airplane to land. And while I was sitting, I just kept contemplating, going over and over the conversations that I had had with my mother before, wondering if they were going to be the same or different. And as soon as the plane landed, I saw my mother, and she was coming, and it was as if everybody else had disappeared. And as I was waiting for her to get closer, I just kept thinking, what do I do? Do I wave to her? Do I hug? Or do I just stand there and wait for her to get close to me? And I just stood there, and she finally came towards me, and she hugged me, and we just shared the most awkwardest hug ever. And the car ride home was even more awkward. She finally pulled out a candy bar and asked if I had wanted it. And since I was young, I obviously said yes. And I remember what kind of chocolate bar it was. It was a Hershey's Cookies and Cream chocolate bar. And I thought that for some reason they had only sold that chocolate bar in California since my mother had given it to me. And now, to this day, I always eat that candy bar and I think of those very good memories. And now I know what to appreciate in life.